especially in his long poems, which until this book I'd wrongly believed he'd stopped writing at some point in the late 1990s, we don't just decipher meanings the poet deposited in the past. Instead, we set the machinery of meaning-making into motion each time we read, each time we enter the poem's environment in the present tense. Maybe this is true of all great writing, but it's particularly true of Ashbery's. Even when one of his poems ends beautifully, and I believe Ashbery composed some of the finest endings in English, it nevertheless breaks off. A circuit is broken when we look up from the page. The experience, however, is endlessly renewable. We just have to recharge the poem with our attention in order to encounter afresh the waveform action of syntax, the making and unmaking of sense, the how, not the what, of knowing. From Flexibility of the Left Hand. We were finished and knew it, but like as not we didn't know it and were unfinished, a work of art. That and so much else. Calmly we note that here. It is merry. Yet the tide comes in on precise steps, and that is to be how we know. Unlike others of its kind, the book you're listening to is in fact merry. Posthumous volumes are typically lugubrious affairs, collections of the poems death cut short, false starts perhaps better left unseen. But unfinished is a term of praise for Ashbery, a term of art. The Ashbery poem, no matter how carefully composed, revised, has to be left a little unrealized, open to the participation of future readers or listeners. That's how it cheats death. I'm not saying these 5 works, lovingly assembled by Emily Skillings, are better for never having been completed. Ashbery strove to perfect his machines for defeating time, and he made clear which poems he thought were failures. But it feels right, and light and moving, that the first volume to appear since his passing is made up of poems still in process, poems in which the resistance to finish is itself a unifying theme. It makes this book a hymn to possibility, to borrow a phrase Ashbery used when reviewing Gertrude Stein in 1957, a hymn to ongoingness, to the fluctuations of the Ashberian experience, instead of a work of mourning. His poems refuse, like the Hollywood serials he celebrates in the Kane Richmond Project, to end, to remain ended. Then he's going to put in that wonderful girl at the end, and the book will be finished, though not the sequel, or a second or a third, if the demand arises. Reviewing Marianne Moore's complete poems in the New York Times in 1967, her complete poems followed her collected poems, Ashbery praised Moore's endless revisions, her sequels, and looked forward to a more complete poems. As long as we can ask, like the student in her poem of that title, "When will your experiment be finished?" we may expect the reply, "Science is never finished." Ashbery didn't endlessly rework his poems as Moore did, but he did repurpose his own lines. One of the many fascinating aspects of Ashbery's process that Skillings illuminates in her excellent introduction and annotations, and his genius for deferral ensures that his poems, too, are never finished. They never take their place in the past, but instead invite us into their perpetual present. Ashbery is American poetry's Scheherazade, and in the poem Scheherazade, written around the time of the self-portrait, Ashbery describes a pleasant wavering of the air, in which all things seem present, whether just past or soon to come. It was all invitation. It was, and it is. There is no last page to the poetry of John Ashbery. You will have had the experience. You can always have it again. Ben Lerner. Introduction. Look at how a pond reflects trees. Imperfectly, perhaps, yet as perfectly as it knows how. And the little mistakes in the reflection are what makes it charming and nice. gives stealth to